This is News Conference Extra with Conan Nolan.
Good morning and welcome to News Conference Extra, a special segment of Today in LA Weekend. Joining us from Washington is Chuck Todd, host of Meet the Press, which airs every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. So, Chuck, I understand you're going to have Burbank Congressman Adam Schiff, chair of the House Intelligence Committee, on your show today. And I know he's upset, talked to us, about how John Bolton wrote a book. He didn't testify on behalf of the articles of impeachment back when there was a chance to actually remove the president. My question to you, though, is, would it have mattered? The fact is that although these are explosive accusations against the president in this book, a lot of people think it was all baked in. You would not have changed one vote on the floor of the U.S. Senate.
It's possible. I mean, look, I understand that analysis, but number one, we don't know. We don't know what the moment would have looked like. We also, with John Bolton sitting out there, you would have had witnesses at a Senate trial. So then all of a sudden that Senate trial lasts a little bit longer. Look, I think, though, what Adam Schiff has to answer for is, and there was a lot of criticism of this before, which was the impeachment too narrow? Was the focus too narrow? And this goes to me, Nancy Pelosi has asked questions for this. You know, on one hand, they will argue, hey, we had to keep it narrow in order to have the votes to do this. But there were a couple. They didn't file a lawsuit to try to get Bolton to go because they wanted to hurry this. They wanted to hurry the impeachment along. They wanted to get it done before the presidential election started, which, again, I understand that as well. But it's not a one side. Like, I understand they're upset at Bolton. There's no doubt. Hey, Bolton, you should have spoken out. Maybe you should have resigned more high-profile way. There's a lot of ways he could have handled that I think others would say, if you wanted to make this statement, you could have made it in a more patriotic way. But he chose not to do that. But the House Democrats had a lot of other avenues they could have gone, and they chose not to do that. They could have held off on sending the articles, basically, and kept this as an open inquiry. And boy, what would the inquiry be looking like right now?
In their defense, one of the arguments they made was that the Russia probe was so amorphous and massive, they needed to simplify this for the American public. And that's one of the rationales for making it as limited as they did. Let's move on to something else, though. Fox News had a poll out nationally that had President Trump losing to Joe Biden by 12 points, that he is definitely underwater in some major swing states. At what point does the Republican Party start to become extremely concerned over what this will, if that's true, and if these numbers hold, what it means for the down ballot races and their control of the Senate, and let's not even assume they could have a chance of retaking the House?
Yeah, look, the concern's already there, and I would say the panic button is there, but here's the conventional thinking, whether it's Cory Gardner's folks in Colorado, Susan Collins' folks in Maine, or Mitch McConnell's thinking, who's really sort of the national strategist to all this. And I've had this, the math doesn't, separating yourself from Donald Trump doesn't help your math if you're a Republican incumbent. That's the quandary they're in. And that if you somehow separate yourself from Trump, right, the theory would go, okay, maybe you can make yourself more appealing to suburban voters. But right now, suburban voters, they may like that you've separated yourself from Trump, but they may not like you enough to vote for you. And the problem is the Trump base is too big to poke your finger at them. And I think that's the problem they have, and that's why you've seen all these Republican senators say that they're not going to separate themselves. I guess Susan Collins has said she's not sure how she's going to vote yet. Maine is unique, and she's had a unique standing, so there is some history for her on that front. But I even think that position is less tenable now than it was, and she's behind. I mean, to me, the president's weakness, if you want to see how politically weak he is, look at the head-to-head matchups in Arizona Senate, Colorado Senate, and Iowa Senate right now. Not only are Democrats ahead in all three of those places, it's double digits in Arizona, it's double digits in Colorado, and it's single digits in Iowa. That tells you, and this is not because that Joni Ernst or Cory Gardner or Martha McSally have a problem. They have a Republican brand Trump problem.
Right, and no White House has leaked the way this one has. And the most recent articles we're seeing in the Washington Post or the New York Times talks about how the president is acting in such a way that some of his his advisors aren't sure he wants a second term. They believe that he will marshal the energy to put up a fight in the fall, but that the wheels are coming off the wagon in a way we haven't seen up until now. And you have on top of this the possibility, as we saw in 1917 and every pandemic over the past 3 centuries, there's always been a big second wave, and we're not even through the first wave.
I think it's pretty inevitable the second wave's coming now. I mean, these scientists have been right every single way. You know, think about the early models about projected death tolls, and everybody wanted to nitpick on, oh, it's not right, it's not this. Turns out those models have been more accurate than not, which means, yeah, this second wave, we have to assume it's coming. We can't just hope it won't. Look, I've never bought the idea that he doesn't want a second term. He wants to win. Whether he wants to do the work that it would take to win is another story, and I think that's where this frustration comes out of. And so the question I have, though, is there enough people around him that can keep him from doing more of these unforced errors? And it seems pretty clear to me that there are not enough that will do that. We'll find out how he performs at these rallies, but he's been making a ton of unforced errors, and that strikes me as a whole bunch of his aides have thrown up their hands, and they don't even try to rein him in.
Who's on the program? Well,
you already promoted Mr. Schiff. We will be hearing from the White House in reaction to all of the events in Tulsa, plus an epidemiologist on where we are headed with this virus.
Chuck Todd, host of Meet the Press, Sunday morning at 8. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thanks, Conan.
NBC4's news conference follows at 9 o'clock. We will be talking with the governor of California regarding his order for everybody to wear a mask. Talk to the state attorney general, Javier Becerra, on his proposals for police reform. Kevin De Leon, the former president pro tem of the California Senate, with regard to the Supreme Court decision not to hear a challenge to the sanctuary state law. And a group representing the Asian, African American, and Latino communities in Los Angeles try to take the measure from those communities on issues such as immigration and police reform. That's news conference at 9 following Meet the Press. We'll see you then.